Speaking to like kind of on this, but speaking towards season 3, isn't it crazy how many of the books that are banned are just banned because like it
There's a
made
gay person in
someone
it?
Like
Yeah.
it's just not still in this day and age.
Yeah.
Too much swearing, so we're banning it. Like what? Like
we don't want our children to learn about the real world because that might upset them. And you're like, the real world is upsetting, right?
Yeah. As if learning doesn't include moments of discomfort.
Yes,
because you're
that's where growth
bringing
is.
in new information and it's possibly opening up new perspectives and possibilities. But this theme is coming up more and more of you made me uncomfortable. How dare you? And it's a weird phenomenon that I don't understand. So I'm mentioning it to all of you just because it mildly came up, this idea of the banned books and how so many of them are struck off because, well, you know, it's making me uncomfortable.
Yeah. What's worse, somebody feeling mildly uncomfortable or the people
history
who are being
being
censored?
alive.
Yeah.
People have got the message that they're not supposed to be uncomfortable, that they're not supposed to be offended, right? Like that's not supposed to happen. And if it happens, it's incredibly offensive. It must be something bad
you have done.
Yeah. Like you've wronged me because I have this expectation that I will always be comfortable and never offended. And that's not realistic.
I like feeling uncomfortable. I want people to challenge me. I want people to give me information that makes me feel like I need to think about it and be challenged and, I don't know, think of a different perspective or change my view if it's something that I didn't realize, I thought, and I don't know. I think that's also, we've come that far too as a society that I know people also don't want to feel uncomfortable, but I feel like we're more okay with feeling uncomfortable now than our parents' generation maybe I'm just wrong.
No, for sure. Like we're not done for sure, but like I was watching the history of sitcoms yesterday, and like before, people on TV had to be shown sleeping in separate beds and then they're like, and then Sex in the City. And like, it's like showing how far that has come. And I think what you're speaking about is kind of like anti-racism work, right? So, and I think that's still really new. I mean, at least it's new to me, but I also feel like it's fairly in its infancy, at mainstream anyway, because that is what it's about. It's about opening yourself up to being uncomfortable, being wrong, being told that you made a mistake, and like all of those things that you're describing. And I don't think that that everybody's there for sure, but that I think is where we should strive to go, because that's what it takes in order to move forward. Otherwise, we will be frozen in fear of either being racist or whatever, right? We'll be frozen because that's why it's funny that you made that comment, because I was just thinking, like, I want to ask everyone, like, how do you feel about talking about this book? I know that I'm hypersensitive because I want to be respectful and I don't want to make any mistakes. And so I'm still wrestling with that whole thing, even though I know and feel strongly about how important it is. So I just wanted to open it up if anyone else has any thoughts or feelings just about the experience of talking about this book.
I think already there's more pauses between people talking, right? Because we're all like, well, how do I feel and how do I express myself in a respectful way? And like at the same time, you can say, like, I know this book is going to make me feel uncomfortable and maybe I'll go through a little bit of depression and it'll be hard. And at the same time, I think it's important to read it and go through those hard times, because what I'm experiencing is nothing compared to what these children experienced. And how else can you support change if you're not even willing to feel uncomfortable for a couple months? Or, I mean, I say a couple months, like I'm not going to retain anything, but you know what I mean? When you're in it.
While you're reading it.
Yeah.
When
like
you're reading it, that's
experience.
The most intense. While you're trying to work through all the information. And, I think there's part of me that like thinks I know what happened, but when you have somebody who went and tell you, that's different. So I have some expectation of what is going to be in the book, and at the same time definitely there's going to be some prizes, or even just processing that, like, okay, I thought that was a thing and it was.
Yeah, confirmation or
The
whatever.
confirmation. So yeah, it is tough.
Book interrupted.
My interruption is traveling in the time of the pandemic, or not even the time of the pandemic, kind of after pandemic, when we're kind of still in a pandemic, but not really. So I'm supposed to fly out tomorrow morning at 6:25 a.m. And last Wednesday, I'd got an update, like an email saying everything was fine. And then I went to look on the website at Saturday night just to make sure that everything was good and stuff. And the website of the airline says that the flight doesn't exist. I knew that their call center opened at 9 a.m. So then I called at 9 a.m. and the girl goes, "What do you mean? You're just trying to check to see if the flight's still there?" Like, yeah, that's, explain the situation. She goes, "Okay." Like, it's kind of annoyed with me. And then she goes, "Oh. And she's like, "Just a sec." Then she goes away, and then she comes back. She goes, "Oh, And she goes away again. She finally comes back and goes, "Oh, it's just a glitch in their system. And there is still a flight. It just doesn't show up on their website. And that everything should be fine." I was like, okay. They're like, "We're getting it fixed." Okay, great. So fine. So every day I check, the website still says that there is no flight. So I go to check in, and they let me check in. So hopefully I will be on a plane tomorrow morning to see Laird. So I guess I'll let y'all know if I make it tomorrow. Who knows?
Book interrupted.
I had no awareness, in spite of pursuing Indigenous studies so that I could have some awareness of Indian hospitals. I had no idea that those were a thing until I went through that Sanya's Indigenous training. And that also blows my mind. I don't even know how I could be more like surprised and disgusted, but like, it's just
I don't know about it.
atrocious.
You
You don't
have-
even
I don't either.
okay.
I'm
I
not
haven't
in that
started-
chapter yet.
I have no
just
awareness.
got to chapter 5. Yeah,
So
I
it's
haven't-
in there. Before that, she spends a lot of time in a hospital, like, and they go away for like 2 years to the hospital. But what they're doing in the hospital is crazy experiments on them. They're doing whatever they feel like. They're treating them like how we currently treat animals. Well, I don't know how much animal experimentation is still happening, but
Is that the tube thing? That was an experiment they did on
I don't
her?
know if that was
The
an
tuberculosis?
experiment
I
or
don't know
not,
if
but
that
she doesn't
one
know why
was.
she had to swallow the tube so
Yeah.
many times. And I also wondered about that. Is that just her,
Me
like
too.
her child memory? Like, is the tube actually a tube, or is that the best way that she can understand being sexually assaulted? Like, I don't know about that either, right? But they sterilized a bunch of women without their consent or knowledge.
They
Like,
just would perform experiments.
and I had no idea. And that also was like, what? Like, it's like it is. It literally is. And I don't know, I'm probably going to be risky here, but that's literally like a giant Canadian Holocaust, right? Like, I don't understand, like, it's not different at all. So the fact that, you talk about the Holocaust, everyone's very comfortable being like, that was off the charts as far as unacceptable. But then we talk about like the entire history of Canada's Indigenous people, and people are still like, well, or whatever, maybe not even in the full know, but like, I don't see how it's even a little bit different, except for it's gone on for way longer. Like
They numbered the kids. They were in work camps.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not different at all. Not different
I
at all.
thought there was a
They
news story.
they didn't give them good food. It was substandard and disgusting. There was sleep deprivation and horrible
They
sleeping
came home with
conditions.
bugs.
Yeah.
I thought there was a fairly recent news story about a woman being
Yes,
sterilized without being told about it, like recently.
recently.
Like,
Yeah,
These
was it an
biases
Indigenous
and-
woman or
Yeah.
just?
Yes.
Indigenous
Mhm.
women.
I'll try to find it, but it was like these things still happen because the racism and the biases and like all the stereotypes, all these things are still persisting in the healthcare system, and like Indigenous people don't get the same care as white people.
They're less likely to seek it too, because of their entire experience and history with.
Yeah.
Right, so you only go to the hospital if you're desperate, and then that's it's just, and you're not going to necessarily get the care, and it persists, is what I'm saying.
Yep, it does.
There, Indigenous women still forced, coerced into sterilization, a Senate report from June 3rd, 2021. That's the headline from the Global News. So that was in 2021 that it's still happening. Yeah. I've been wanting to learn more about residential schools. So I'm glad you picked this book, Kim, because I know some, but I've been debating about picking up Five Little Indians or a few other, books. And so I'm glad you picked this, because this is speeding along the timeline, because I think we should all know more about it.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like I picked it because it was like current in my mind, like in the front of the media and everything. And now if you look, when we're coming to finally do it, because we obviously pick our books so far in advance, it's not at all talked about. It's not over. They're not finished finding bodies and
Thousands.
Right. And so I'm glad also that this will, not like we're
The Pope
worldwide,
only
like we're
just apologized, I think, 2 months ago.
and it's still like, is that even good enough?
And
like, was that
yeah.
like, I can't even, the whole like history is like white people being like,
Well,
oh yeah, sorry, or oh, okay, like whatever. And then just doing whatever they want anyway. And it's just like, I don't blame.
Or being advised by their lawyers on how to proceed.
The fact that the apology didn't come right away, like it can be like, oh, I'm
it was
the
over
Pope,
a
but I
year.
didn't know. But that it was like people have to keep on asking, and if you continually ask for an apology and then eventually comes, it doesn't really feel genuine, does it? Right?
No.
Right? Like it just doesn't. You shouldn't have to ask.
Exactly right.
Right? Yeah.
From one of the wealthiest organizations on planet Earth, you shouldn't have to beg.
The two cultures are just so fundamentally different that it's very challenging for any real reconciliation to happen. Is kind of how I feel. Like that's how I started trying to learn more, because I learned what I learned. I observed the pattern, which is like the white people say whatever they need to say to continue being white people, while the Indigenous people just get ripped off, and in the beginning like trusted until they realize like, oh, you guys just say whatever the fuck you want and then just keep on doing whatever the fuck you want. And so the reconciliation report was out and it had all the things listed, like what's the status of that? Not good, and it doesn't matter anyways, because I feel like it's bullshit, and not bullshit like not worth it, but I feel like it's just repeating the same old patterns. And so when I pursue allyship, I'm really trying to understand in a meaningful way how to actually have some kind of reconciliation. It's really hard for me to not be cynical, but for to go and like dive into groups that are made up of Indigenous people. And like, if they'll have me too, on top of that, right? That's what I try to do. It's really, really, I don't want to say like ground floor, you know what I mean? Like it's not checking off any of the calls to reconciliation or whatever, but it's at least like helping me really understand from a legitimate perspective. I guess it's too big picture. I get really overwhelmed when I look at the big picture and I take in like the fact of how history went and everything else. I'm like, what's the point? Like, this is bullshit. So I got to go right down and get into a group that is about, like I joined a group. There's the group called Indigenize, and they put on workshops or workshops, I guess. They'll go into a school and like help give some training to the teachers or whatever, right? They have a whole bunch of different things that they do. And I went in one that was called like Reconciliation, right? And like, that's what it's about. It's like, okay, I understand all the lists and whatever, but like now how do I actually go about trying to actually do anything? So I'm still trying, you know what I mean? But I don't feel like I'm doing. And I also feel scared, like when we have this conversation of an outside voice being like, okay, yeah, you can talk about it and condemn it all you want, but what are you doing? Right? I'm back to the reason why I picked this book. Hopefully what I'm doing is at least a little bit of awareness raising around ways to find out the stories if you're interested in learning more.
Well, like, and just like we've talked about before, anything you expose yourself to can change your unconscious bias as well. So like reading the stories and learning more and all the stuff. And I think I'm going to echo what some of the other members said, is like, I've been thinking about looking at books that I want to read about residential schools. And so it's nice that you picked this, right? Because there's more than one to choose from. And it's also nice to have some people to talk to about the book, right? Like to process all of it. It's nice to have somebody to talk to and who's also trying to process the same information. And
who's also trying to stumble forward. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, because it's like not lost on me that we're a bunch of white girls, right? Talking about it. You know, I would open up the fan episode to any Indigenous bookies who might want to come in and share their thoughts or feelings too. I'd love to like level up our representation.
Leah, do you have any thoughts?
I know it's hard because I don't generally, I'm reading the last book right up until the morning of, so I haven't started any of this, not even the foreword. I can tell you that I'm nervous about reading it. Not maybe nervous in a, nervous is the wrong word. I know I'm going to be uncomfortable, and that it's hard to look forward to something that makes you uncomfortable, but I know that that's important.
Mm-hmm.
So nervous is the wrong choice of word. I don't know much on the topic aside from the little bit I've seen on the news. And it's pretty heartbreaking stuff. And I think that it's going to be a good read, actually. A hard read, but a good read. It's also, I find really hard when you see like real life pictures and stuff. Oh, God. Yeah, just you guys talking about it that are like further into the book and the little stuff I get a lot of, like I can feel in my body. So it should be something kind of horrifying and enlightening all at the same time. I'm glad you picked it though. Don't take it as anything other than
no. Like I understand that the thing that's also challenging that I think that you might be speaking to too is like, what if I can't read this book?
I know there's some like hierarchy of like certain books, like we were saying, like Fun Home, that was her experience and her life story. And I mentioned in my my personal journals, like I want to be respectful because it wasn't my particular cup of tea, but
that's someone's life.
When it's someone's life. And I was thinking about that when that came up, and I was thinking, I think I need to, like, there's certain books that maybe it's almost not an option not to finish, you know? Maybe it's not in the timeline that this book cycle allows, but maybe it's important to like commit to that.
I like that. I was just thinking too on how I'm afraid of like, you know, actually participating in white saviorism or being perceived as white saviorism motivated. And I think how I've reconciled that with myself now, just in this moment, based on Mayor's comments and listening to Leah, is that in the very least, we can be the example for white privileged women. I guess that could kind of cover all of us. And so it's not about us doing something, you know, directly for Indigenous people, but it is about us showing an example of something you can do as a white privileged woman who also doesn't really know what to do. You can at least pick up a book. Here's a good one, and we'll talk about it. So maybe other people will be like, oh, okay, I could read that, or that sounds like a good idea.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
Never forget, every child matters.